The cold settles in the bones first. Alara knows this. She feels it in the marrow of her, a deep, persistent ache that has nothing to do with the November chill seeping through the window frames of the old cabin. It's a soul cold, a frost that set in 3 years ago and has refused to thaw. Her grandfather had left her this place, a small, timber frame box at the edge of a forest so deep and old, the maps just gave up and painted it a solid, unassuming green. A place to be quiet, he'd written in the letter with the deed. He hadn't known it would become a place to hide, a fortress of solitude built from shame and fear. A cough, thin and ragged, cuts through the quiet hum of the refrigerator. Alara's head snaps up from the chipped ceramic mug she's cradling. Her own chill is forgotten, replaced by a familiar, sharp-edged panic. In the small bedroom, Lily is stirring. She moves without a sound, her bare feet whispering over the cold floorboards. The room is tiny, filled almost completely by a small bed and a stack of secondhand storybooks. Lily, her 5-year-old miracle, her only one, is a small lump under a mountain of blankets. Her face, usually so full of sunshine, is pale and slick with sweat in the dim glow of the dinosaur-shaped nightlight. "Mommy?" The voice is a reedy whisper. "I'm here, sweet pea." Alara's hand goes to her daughter's forehead. It's like touching a stove, a damp, frightening heat that seems to radiate from the very center of her small body. The fever is back. Or maybe it never really left, just retreated for a few hours to gather its strength. The doctors in the nearest town, a 40-minute drive away, had been useless. A persistent virus, they'd said, their faces professionally blank. They'd prescribed rest and fluids, their words hollow comfort against the rising tide of Alara's terror. They didn't see the way the fever stole Lily's breath, the way it clung to her like a second skin. They didn't feel the cold dread that was Alara's constant companion. They didn't understand what it meant to have only one. After a difficult birth and a dismissive doctor who told her more children were not advisable, Lily had become the whole of Alara's world. A world Jason, Lily's father, had walked out of with a casual shrug, leaving behind nothing but broken promises and a pile of debt. He'd hated the quiet, hated the responsibility. He'd called Alara's love for their daughter suffocating. He had been the last man she had trusted. He had been the final lesson in a long, brutal education. Men, with their easy smiles and their loud promises, were a language she no longer wished to learn. Here, in the woods, there were no men. There was only the wind in the pines, the cry of a distant hawk, and the steady, frantic beat of her own heart. She gives Lily a sip of water, her movements gentle, practiced. She tells her a story, her voice low and even a stark contrast to the storm of fear raging inside her. She smooths the damp hair from her daughter's brow and hums a lullaby, the same one her grandfather used to hum to her. As Lily's breathing evens out into a shallow, restless sleep, Alara retreats to the main room. The wind is picking up outside, rattling the windows in their frames. It sounds angry, accusatory. She stares out into the churning darkness. The forest is a wall of black, impenetrable. Legends clung to these woods like moss to the ancient oaks. Stories of things that walked on 2 legs and 4, of a pack that ruled the deep wilderness, things the townsfolk spoke of in hushed tones after a few beers. They called its leader the Alpha, a ghost, a shadow, something to be feared and avoided. Her grandfather had told her the stories were just that, and stories. But he'd also told her to respect the woods, to never take more than she needed, to never venture too deep after dusk. Now, staring into that abyss, a desperate, insane thought takes root in her mind. A thought born of sleepless nights and the smell of sickness. The doctors had failed her. Modern medicine had failed her. What was left? Old magic? Folk tales? A deal with a ghost? She shakes her head, a harsh, bitter laugh escaping her lips. She is truly losing it. talking to herself, considering bargains with creatures that don't exist. A crash from the porch yanks her from her spiraling thoughts. It's not the sound of a branch. It's heavy, solid, a sound of impact and splintering wood. Alara freezes, her heart leaping into her throat. Her first thought is Jason. Has he found them? Come to harass her? To demand something she doesn't have? Then comes a sound that drives the blood from her face. A low, guttural growl of pure agony. It's an animal sound, but deeper, more resonant than any bear or mountain lion. It vibrates through the floorboards, a bass note of pure suffering, followed by a series of high-pitched, terrified whimpers, like a puppy. Every instinct screams at her. Lock the door. Grab the old shotgun from over the mantel. Hide. Protect Lily. But the whimpering, it slices right through her fear. It sounds so small, so lost. She creeps to the door, her breath held tight in her chest. Her hand trembles as she reaches for the deadbolt. The warnings of the townsfolk, her grandfather's caution, her own hard-won paranoia, it all screams no. But the memory of being left alone, of Jason walking away while she cried, of the doctor's indifferent shrugs, it rises up, a hot, defiant wave. She knows what it is to be in pain and have the world turn its back. She peeks through the small, grimy window pane next to the door, and her breath catches. Sprawled on her porch, half crushing the railing he must have hit, is a wolf. But to call it a wolf is to call a hurricane a light breeze. It is enormous, a creature of myth. Its fur is the color of a starless midnight, matted and dark with rain and something else. Something thicker. Blood. A long, vicious gash runs along its flank, deep and angry. Its breaths are coming in ragged, shuddering gasps. But it's not its own pain that seems to command its attention. Curled protectively against its belly, tucked beneath its massive jaw, is a tiny wolf pup. It's the source of the whimpering, its small body trembling uncontrollably. The great wolf's head is raised, and its eyes find hers through the glass. They are not the flat, wild eyes of an animal. They are a strange, luminous amber, and they are filled with an intelligence that makes her skin crawl. And in their depths, she sees it. Not rage, not aggression. A desperate plea. Logic is a distant, tinny voice in her head. Danger. Beast. Monster. But her heart, that foolish bleeding organ she has tried so hard to armor, sees something else. It sees a parent, a father trying to protect his child. The pup lets out another piteous cry, and it mirrors the sound of Lily's weak cough. In that moment, the choice is made. Not by her mind, but by some deeper, more fundamental part of her. She will not be the one who closes the door. With a hand that is surprisingly steady, Alara unbolts the lock. She turns the knob, the click sounding like a gunshot in the roaring silence of the storm. She opens the door. The cold, wet wind rushes in, smelling of pine and rain and blood. The giant wolf's amber eyes watch her, unblinking as she steps back, holding the door open, an invitation. An act of profound, terrifying madness. He struggles, his powerful legs trembling with effort. He pushes himself to his feet, a low groan of pain rumbling in his chest. He nudges the pup forward with his nose, urging it inside. The small creature scrambles past her, a tiny ball of terrified fluff, and immediately hides under the worn armchair in the corner. Then, the great wolf follows. He limps over her threshold, his sheer size seeming to shrink the small cabin. He moves with a pained, regal grace, never taking his intelligent eyes off her. Once inside, he collapses onto the braided rug before the cold fireplace, his head hitting the floor with a heavy thud. His breathing is a harsh, wet rasp. Alara closes the door, shutting out the storm. The quiet inside is suddenly immense, filled with the presence of these wild things. The air is thick with the metallic tang of blood, the damp scent of fur, the primal smell of the forest itself. She stands there for a long moment, her back pressed against the wood of the door, her mind a blank slate of shock. What have I done? The question hangs in the air, unanswered. The pup whimpers from under the chair. The great wolf on the floor doesn't move, except for the shallow rise and fall of his ribs. The gash on his side is sluggishly weeping blood onto her grandfather's rug. Panic gives way to a strange, almost numb sense of purpose. She has made this insane choice. Now, she has to live with it, or die from it. She moves, her actions automatic. She pulls the first aid kit from the bathroom. It's meager, mostly filled with cartoon bandages and antiseptic wipes for Lily's scraped knees. It feels absurdly inadequate. Okay, she whispers, mostly to herself. Okay. She approaches the wolf. He's so still. Too still. Up close. He's even bigger. A mountain of dark fur and coiled muscle. His head is the size of a small boulder. She can see the silver scars of old battles crisscrossing his muzzle. His eyes crack open, pinning her with that unnerving amber gaze. There's no threat in them, just pain, and exhaustion, and a sliver of something that looks like gratitude. I'm not going to hurt you, she says, her voice trembling slightly. I have to clean this. She gestures to the wound. He seems to understand. With a monumental effort, he rolls slightly onto his other side, giving her better access to the injury. The gash is worse than she thought. It's deep, torn into the muscle. It's not a claw mark. It's too clean for that. It looks like it was made by metal. A trap, maybe, or something worse. Her hands shake as she dabs at the edges, with a cloth soaked in warm water. The wolf flinches, a muscle twitching along his spine, but he makes no sound. He just watches her, his gaze unwavering, intense. It feels like he's looking past her skin, past her fear, and seeing the fractured, frightened thing she keeps hidden inside. The feeling is so unnerving she has to look away, focusing on her task. She cleans the wound as best she can, her stomach churning at the sight of torn flesh. She has no thread to stitch it, nothing strong enough. All she can do is pack it with the gauze from the kit and wrap it tightly with strips torn from an old bedsheet. It's a clumsy amateur job. Through it all, he remains impossibly still, accepting her touch. When she's done, she sinks back on her heels, exhausted. That's all I can do, she murmurs. His eyes close. He lets out a long, shuddering sigh, a sound of profound relief. From the bedroom, Lily coughs again, a dry, hacking sound. The great wolf's eyes snap open. His head lifts a fraction of an inch from the floor, his ears swiveling toward the sound. A low, worried rumble starts in his chest. It's not a growl of aggression. It's a sound of concern. It's the most bizarre thing she has ever witnessed. The pup, emboldened by the relative quiet, finally peeks out from under the chair. Its eyes, the same amber as the father's, are wide with fear and curiosity. It looks at her, then at the large wolf on the floor, and lets out a soft whine. Alara's heart aches. She gets a small bowl, fills it with water, and pushes it gently toward the little one. The pup flinches back. Then, driven by thirst, it creeps forward and begins to lap at the water, its tiny pink tongue darting in and out. She has 2 wolves in her living room. One is bleeding on her rug. The other is drinking from one of her soup bowls. Lily is sick in the next room. The storm is howling like a banshee. This is her life now. She pulls a thick blanket from the couch and drapes it over the injured wolf. His fur is cold and damp. He stirs at her touch, but doesn't pull away. Instead, he seems to lean into the warmth, a barely perceptible movement. "You need to rest," she finds herself saying, as if he were a person, as if he could understand. But the strangest thing is, she feels like he does. The days that follow fall into a surreal rhythm, a fragile truce between the wild and the domestic, played out within the four walls of her tiny cabin. Alara moves in a haze of exhaustion. Her life becomes a cycle of caring. She tends to Lily, coaxing broth and water past her pale lips, her heart twisting with every feverish whimper. She reads her stories until her own voice is raw, a desperate attempt to anchor her daughter to the world of the living. Then, she tends to the wolves. She names them in her head because calling them the big one and the little one feels inadequate. The great wolf is Kale. It sounds strong, ancient, like the stones in the Forest Creek bed. The pup is Kaelin, small and brave. Kale's recovery is unnatural. The wound that should have festered, should have killed a creature his size, begins to heal at an astonishing rate. Each morning when she changes the clumsy bandages, the flesh beneath is cleaner, pinker. The deep gash is closing, knitting itself together with a speed that defies all logic. He spends most of his time lying by the hearth, a silent, watchful mountain of black fur. His amber eyes follow her everywhere. They watch her as she cooks, as she cleans, as she stares out the window with worry-etched lines around her eyes. It's not a predatory gaze. It's observant, knowing. It makes her feel seen in a way that is both terrifying and deeply comforting. She starts talking to him. At first, it's just practical things. "I have to go check on my daughter." Or, "I'm changing your dressing now." But the silence of the cabin, broken only by Lily's coughs and Kaelin's soft yips, presses in on her. The loneliness she has carried for 3 years becomes a tangible weight, and Kale is such a good listener. One night, sitting on the floor beside him while Lily finally sleeps, she finds herself whispering into the darkness. Her father, Jason, he said I loved her too much, she says, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. He said I was smothering her. But how can you love someone too much, especially when they're all you have? Hale's ear twitches. He shifts his great head and rests it on his paws, his gaze soft in the firelight. He didn't want to be a father. Not really. He wanted the idea of it, the happy family picture. He didn't want the fevers, the sleepless nights, the bills. She traces a pattern on the wooden floor with her finger. When it got hard, he left, just walked away, told me I was better off alone, that I was too much. A low rumble vibrates from Kale's chest. It's a soothing sound, a note of deep sympathy that resonates in her own weary bone. She reaches out, her hand hesitating for a moment before she lays it on his broad head, her fingers sinking into the thick, coarse fur between his ears. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't move at all. He just closes his eyes and leans into her touch, a silent acceptance of the comfort she is offering. And in return, he offers his silent, solid presence. It's the first time she has touched a male being in 3 years without recoiling. The first time she has felt a flicker of safety in the presence of one. It's absurd. He's a wolf, a wild animal, and yet Kaelan, meanwhile, becomes a shadow to Lily. On the rare occasions Lily is strong enough to get out of bed, the small pup is there, a furry, warm presence at her side. He never jumps or nips. He seems to understand her fragility. He'll nudge a soft toy toward her with his nose, or simply lay his head on her lap as she sits listlessly in the armchair. One afternoon, Alara watches from the kitchen doorway, her heart caught in her throat. Lily, looking so small and frail, is holding a picture book. Kaelan is sitting before her, his head cocked as if he's listening intently. And the brave knight, he fought the dragon, Lily whispers, her voice barely audible. She coughs. a harsh, racking sound that shakes her whole frame. Kalen whines, a soft, anxious sound. He licks her hand gently, his small body vibrating with what looks exactly like concern. Lily manages a weak smile, the first real smile Alara has seen in weeks. It's okay, Kalen. He wins. A tear escapes Alara's eye and traces a cold path down her cheek. She is living in a fairy tale, a strange, dark, beautiful fairy tale, where wolves are gentle and her daughter has a furry guardian angel. But outside the cabin walls, the real world and Lily's illness still loom. The fever is relentless. It ebbs and flows, each time seeming to steal a little more of her daughter's light. Alara's hope is fraying, thread by thread. One morning, it's worse than ever. Lily is barely responsive, her skin burning hot, her breathing terrifyingly shallow. Alara is frantic, pacing the small room like a caged animal. The 40-minute drive to the useless doctor's feels like an eternity she doesn't have. She sinks to the floor in the main room, her head in her hands, a dry, choked sob tearing from her throat. I don't know what to do, she gasps to the empty room. I'm going to lose her. I can't lose her. A wet nose nudges her hand. She looks up into Kale's amber eyes. He is standing over her, no longer limping. He looks fully healed, his powerful form radiating a quiet strength. He whines softly, the sound full of a pain that mirrors her own. He nudges her again, more insistently this time, toward the door. Then he looks pointedly at the mantelpiece, where a small woven basket she uses for kindling sits. What? She asks, confused. What is it? He nudges her toward the door again, then gives a short, soft bark. It's the first time she's heard him make a sound other than a growl or a whine. It's an urgent, commanding sound. He wants her to go outside with the basket. It's insane. Lily is fading, and the wolf wants to go for a walk. But the look in his eyes, it's not random. It's deliberate. It's intelligent. It's a look that says, "Trust me." She has trusted doctors with their sterile offices and empty words. She has trusted a man who promised her a life of happiness. They all failed her. She looks at this creature who appeared in a storm, who has listened to her secrets, who has shown her nothing but a strange, quiet gentleness. What does she have to lose? Numbly, she stands. She pulls on her boots and coat, grabs the small basket, and opens the door. The air is crisp and cold, smelling of snow. Hale moves past her, then waits, looking back to make sure she's following. Kalen, after a hesitant glance toward Lily's room, bounds after his father. Alara hesitates for only a second, then follows them into the deep, silent woods. She is putting her faith and her daughter's life in the paws of a wolf. The forest floor is a soft carpet of fallen pine needles, muffling their steps. Kale leads her with purpose, moving through the ancient trees as if they are an extension of his own being. He doesn't lead her deep, but rather along the edge of a frozen creek bed, his head low to the ground, sniffing. Alara follows, her mind a numb buzz of fear and a tiny flickering ember of hope. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, makes her think of Lily, alone in the cabin. But a strange sense of calm emanates from Kale, a silent reassurance that keeps her moving forward. He stops suddenly beside a cluster of gnarled roots at the base of an old oak. Hidden beneath a dusting of snow and dead leaves is a small patch of greenery. A plant with dark, velvety leaves and a single, pale, bell-shaped flower, blooming defiantly in the face of winter. Hale nudges it with his nose, then looks at her, then at the basket. The message is unmistakable. This. Her hands are trembling as she kneels. She has never seen a flower like this before. It seems to hum with a quiet energy, its pale petals almost glowing in the dim light of the forest. Carefully, she digs around the roots with her numb fingers, lifting the entire plant from the frozen earth, and placing it gently in her basket. Kale lets out a soft woof of approval and immediately turns, heading back toward the cabin at a brisk trot. When they return, the cabin feels colder, quieter. Fear clutches at Alara's throat. She rushes to the bedroom. Lily hasn't moved. Her breathing is even more shallow, her face ashen. No, 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 Alara breathes, her last ember of hope threatening to be extinguished. Kale pushes past her into the room. He goes to the bedside and licks Lily's small, limp hand. He then looks at Alara, a piercing, urgent look, and nudges the basket she's still holding. Her hands move on their own. She crushes the leaves and the single flower in a small bowl, adding a little warm water to make a fragrant, dark pulp. The scent is strange, earthy and sweet, like damp soil and honey. It fills the small room, a smell of life in the face of death. With a small spoon, her heart pounding against her ribs, she carefully coaxes a tiny amount of the paste between Lily's lips. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, a flicker. A tiny flutter of Lily's eyelashes. A sigh. A small bead of sweat breaks on her upper lip. Alara watches, barely breathing. She dabs Lily's forehead with a cool cloth. It seems less hot. Infinitesimally, but she's sure of it. The burning, terrifying heat is receding. She looks at Kale, who is standing sentinel at the foot of the bed. His amber eyes are fixed on Lily, soft with an emotion she can't name. Hope, fragile and terrifying, unfurls in her chest. It works. Slowly, miraculously, it works. Over the next few hours, Lily's fever breaks. Color returns to her cheeks. Her breathing deepens, evens out, losing its ragged edge. By nightfall, she is sleeping a true, peaceful sleep for the first time in weeks. Alara sits by the bed, holding Lily's hand, tears streaming silently down her face. They are not tears of sorrow, but of a profound, overwhelming relief that makes her feel weak and strong all at once. She saved her. With a secret flower from the woods, shown to her by a mythical wolf. Later, she finds Kale lying by the fire again. She kneels beside him, her heart too full for words. She simply lays her head against his powerful shoulder, her whole body trembling with the aftershocks of fear and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispers into his thick fur. "Thank you." He makes a low, rumbling sound deep in his chest and turns his great head to gently lick the tears from her cheek. The touch is shockingly intimate, a gesture of comfort so human it makes her breath catch. In that moment, kneeling on the floor of her cabin, her daughter safe in the next room, with a giant wolf's head resting against hers, Alara feels a sense of peace she hasn't known in years. A sense of belonging. She is so lost in the moment, she doesn't hear the sound of the engine until it's too late. A car, pulling up to her isolated cabin. Kale hears it. He's on his feet in an instant, a low, menacing growl starting in his throat. His body is tense, a coiled spring of protective rage. Kalen, sensing the danger, scurries to hide behind him. Alara's blood runs cold. Only one person would drive out here. Only one person would dare. Headlights cut across the windows, sweeping the room in a harsh, invasive light. A car door slams. Heavy footsteps crunch on the gravel path. Jason. Fear, cold and familiar, floods her system, washing away the fragile peace. She scrambles to her feet, her body automatically moving to place herself between the door and Lily's room. "Alara!" His voice booms from outside, confident and demanding. "I know you're in there. A little bird told me you might have run into some money. Holding out on me, are we?" The lie is so typical of him, twisting reality to fit his own selfish narrative. He's not here for Lily. He's here for himself, as always. "Go away, Jason," she yells, her voice shaking. "Not a chance. Open the door or I'll break it down. You know I will." Cale's growl deepens, a terrifying sound that seems to shake the very foundations of the cabin. His lips are pulled back from his teeth, revealing long white canines that look like daggers. "No, Cale," she whispers, putting a hand on his shoulder. The muscle beneath her palm is like granite. "Stay." She can't have this. She can't have him attacking Jason. They'd call the sheriff. They'd hunt Cale down. They'd kill him after he just saved her daughter. The thought is unbearable. The doorknob rattles violently. Then a heavy shoulder thuds against the wood. Once. Twice. On the third impact, the old lock splinters and the door flies open. Jason stands there, framed in the doorway, a smug, cruel smile on his handsome face. His eyes rake over the cabin, taking in the poverty, the worn furniture. Then his gaze lands on her. "There you are, hiding out in this dump. Really hit rock bottom, haven't you?" he says, stepping inside. And then he sees Cale. His smile vanishes. His face goes slack with shock, then pales with fear. He stumbles back a step, his eyes wide. "What? What the hell is that?" he stammers. "Get out, Jason," Alara says, her voice low and steady with a fury she didn't know she possessed. "Is that a wolf? Are you insane? You have that? That thing in here with our daughter?" He finds his footing in indignation, his fear momentarily replaced by his usual brand of self-righteous anger. He takes a step toward her, his hand reaching out to grab her arm. "We're leaving, you and Lily. I'm not leaving her here with a goddamn monster." It happens faster than she can process. One moment, Jason is reaching for her. The next, a blur of black fur and silent fury explodes from beside her. Cale moves with a speed that seems impossible for his size. He doesn't make a sound. He is simply there, between her and Jason. He doesn't bite. He doesn't maul. He hits Jason with the force of a freight train, his massive body slamming into the man's chest and sending him flying backward, out the door and onto the frozen ground. Jason lands with a sickening crunch, the air knocked out of him. Cale stands over him, a black shadow of absolute dominance, the growl in his chest a promise of death. "Cale, no!" Alara screams, rushing onto the porch. Jason, gasping for breath, scrambles backward, his face a mask of pure terror. His hand fumbles for something on the ground, his eyes wild. He finds Ida heavy iron poker from the small woodpile by the door. With a desperate, terrified roar, he swings it. Cale is already moving, twisting to avoid the blow, but he's not quite fast enough. The iron poker connects with his shoulder with a sickening thud. A yelp of pure pain is torn from him. He stumbles, his front leg buckling. The healed wound on his flank, the one she had so carefully tended, tears open again from the force of the impact. Blood, dark and hot, stains his fur. Seeing Cale hurt, seeing him injured while protecting her, something inside Alara snapped. The fear, the years of quiet submission, the feeling of being a victim, it all burns away in a white-hot flash of protective rage. Jason is raising the poker for another strike, his face contorted. Alara doesn't think. She acts. She throws herself in front of the injured wolf, spreading her arms wide, shielding his body with her own. "Get away from him!" she shrieks, her voice a raw, primal sound she doesn't recognize as her own. "If you touch him again, I will kill you myself. Get out! Get out and never come back." Jason freezes, the poker held aloft. He stares at her, at this wild, fierce woman standing between him and the monster. He sees the absolute murderous conviction in her eyes. He sees that she means it. He looks from her to the massive, bleeding wolf crouched behind her, a low growl of agony and rage rumbling from its chest. He looks at the darkness of the forest surrounding them. His bravado crumbles, replaced by stark animal fear. He drops the poker with a clatter. He scrambles to his feet, stumbles to his car, and tears away down the dirt track, his tires spitting gravel. And then he is gone. Silence descends, broken only by the whistling wind and Kale's pained, ragged breathing. Alara's legs give out. She sinks to her knees on the cold porch, her body trembling violently. She turns to Kale. He's struggling to stay upright, blood pooling on the wooden planks beneath him. His amber eyes are glazed with pain, but they are fixed on her. This is her fault. She let him in. She let this happen. "I'm so sorry," she sobs, crawling toward him, her hands hovering over his new wound, unsure of what to do. "I'm so sorry." He lets out a low moan and sways, his strength finally failing him. He begins to collapse. She lunges forward, wrapping her arms around his massive neck, trying to hold him up, trying to absorb his weight, to stop his fall. And then the world turns inside out. The body she is holding begins to shift, to change. The coarse fur beneath her hands softens, becomes smooth skin. The massive, wolfish form contracts, bones popping and realigning with a series of sickening cracks. The heavy head resting on her shoulder elongates, the muzzle receding, the ears shrinking. She is no longer holding a wolf. She is holding a man. He collapses fully, pulling her down with him. He is naked, his body slick with sweat and blood. He is sprawled half in her lap, his head lolling against her chest. His skin is pale beneath a latticework of old silver scars. The new, bleeding wound from the poker is a brutal gash across a powerfully muscled shoulder. Alara can only stare, her mind utterly broken. He is beautiful. Fiercely, ruggedly beautiful. Like the forest itself. His hair is as black as his fur had been, long and tangled. His face, even slack with pain, is all sharp angles and uncompromising strength. He groans, his eyelids fluttering open, and she finds herself staring down into the same amber eyes, intelligent, pained, and achingly familiar. His lips, surprisingly soft, part. He says her name. Not in a bark or a whine, but in a low, rough voice that vibrates right through her. Alara. The world tilts on its axis and goes black. She comes to with the smell of wood smoke and something earthy, like the plant he'd shown her. She's not on the porch. She's on her own bed. The cabin is quiet. Too quiet. Lily. She sits up with a gasp. The room is warm. A fire is crackling in the hearth in the main room. A thick blanket is tucked around her. And sitting in the armchair, watching her, is the man. He's wearing a pair of her grandfather's old work pants, which are ridiculously short on him, and one of her grandfather's flannel shirts, stretched taut across his broad chest and shoulders. His injured shoulder is crudely but effectively bandaged. His black hair is damp, as if he's washed the blood from it. He looks like a wild king forced into a peasant's clothes. At his feet, curled into a tight ball, is the pup, Kaylin, sleeping soundly. Her mind struggles to connect the dots, the wolf, the man, the same amber eyes. It's impossible. It's madness. "Lily," she whispers, her voice hoarse. "She is safe," the man says. His voice is a low baritone, a deep rumble that seems more suited to the forest than her small cabin. She is sleeping. The fever is gone. Alara swings her legs out of bed, her head spinning. She has to see for herself. She stumbles into Lily's room. Her daughter is sleeping peacefully, her cheek rosy, her breathing deep and even. She lays a hand on Lily's forehead. It's cool. Perfectly. Wonderfully cool. Relief makes her knees weak. She leans against the doorframe, her gaze returning to the stranger in her armchair. What are you?" she asks, the question sounding small and inadequate. He watches her for a long moment, his amber eyes filled with a weary sadness. "My name is Kale," he says, as if that explains everything. "The wolf?" "Yes." She shakes her head, trying to clear it. And Kalen? My son. A shifter. A werewolf. The stories were real. The alpha of the woods, bleeding out on her rug. She'd been harboring a myth, a monster, and his child. But he didn't feel like a monster. He felt familiar. You saved her, she says, her voice thick with emotion. The flower, you knew it would save her. It is an old knowledge of my people, he says, his gaze dropping to his hands. A gift from the forest, for a fever that steals the breath of the young. Why? She asks, the question she's been afraid to voice. Why me? Why did you come here? He looks up, and the pain in his eyes is so profound it takes her breath away. We were hunted. That wound, it was from a hunter's trap, silver-laced. It poisons us. I could not heal. Kalen was growing weak. I was desperate. He pauses, his jaw tight. I did not choose this house. I was trying to get back to my territory, to my pack. I collapsed. Where I fell, it happened to be here, at your door. Fate. A cruel, or perhaps kind, twist of it. And when you saw me, she presses. A muscle feathers in his jaw. He looks away, toward the fire. I should have left. The moment I could walk, I should have taken my son and gone. It is our law not to involve humans. They are dangerous. The word is laced with the bitterness of experience. But you stayed, she says softly. Yes. The word is a confession. You protected me from Jason. He would have harmed you. His voice is flat. A statement of simple, indisputable fact. His eyes return to hers, and they are blazing with a fierce, possessive light. I would not allow it. The intensity of his gaze makes the air hum. A strange pull, a current of energy she has felt since he arrived, intensifies, becoming an almost tangible thing between them. It's the feeling she'd mistaken for fear, for awe. It's something else entirely. There is something you are not telling me, she says, her intuition screaming at her. Kale stands, his large frame filling the room. He looks trapped, cornered. He runs a hand through his damp hair, a gesture of profound frustration. You should not have done that, he says, his voice rough with an emotion she can't decipher. Out there, you should not have shielded me. He was going to kill you. You are human, fragile. He could have hurt you, killed you. For me, the last two words are filled with self-loathing. You don't understand what you've done. Then make me understand, she says, her voice rising. She is tired of being afraid, of being in the dark. He takes a step toward her, then stops, as if held back by an invisible chain. There are bonds older than words, Alara. Bonds of fate. When one of my kind finds their mate. It is an unbreakable connection. A pull of the soul. It is for life. Her heart stops, mate. The word hangs in the air between them, shimmering with impossible meaning. I felt it the moment I saw you through the window, he continues, his voice dropping to a pained whisper. A scent like home, a light in the dark. It's why I stayed. It was a torment. To be so close, to see you, to hear your voice, and to be trapped in that form, unable to speak, unable to tell you. It all clicks into place. The way he watched her. The way he listened to her confessions. The protective rage. The gentle comfort. The pull. It wasn't just a wolf's intelligence. It was him. Listening. Waiting. You are my... She can't even say the word. Yes, he breathes. And you are mine. The revelation is a detonation in the quiet cabin. It rewrites the past few weeks, colors every interaction with a new, terrifying, and exhilarating light. But your act on the porch, he closes his eyes, his face tight with pain. A mate's selfless sacrifice, shielding the other from death. It is the final seal on the bond. It makes it absolute. permanent. It ties your life force to mine. It's why I was able to force the change despite the silver poison in my veins. Your strength. It gave me strength. He opens his eyes and they are filled with a desperate apology. I have bound you to me, to this life, to a monster. I never wanted this for you. I was going to leave. I swear it. I was going to take Kaylin and disappear back into the woods, and you would have been safe. You would have remembered a strange wolf who helped your daughter, and nothing more. He tries to push her away with his words, to erect a wall of guilt and fear between them. He calls himself a monster, tries to make her afraid of what he is, of what he's done. But she's not afraid. All her life, she's been told she's too much, too emotional, too soft. Jason had used her compassion against her. Society had dismissed her. But this man, this creature of myth, he is telling her that her compassion, her impulsive, selfless act of love, was a source of immense power. It hadn't been a weakness. It had been the key. A monster, she says, her voice quiet but ringing with a newfound strength. She takes a step toward him. A monster doesn't listen to a lonely woman's fears in the middle of the night. A monster doesn't grieve when a child is sick. A monster doesn't risk his life to protect someone from a man like Jason. She is standing in front of him now, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. She has to tilt her head back to look up into his face. I have seen a monster, she says, her voice dropping. His name is Jason. He's handsome and he smiles and he tells you everything you want to hear, and he will leave you to die without a second thought. You are not him. Hair's well in his amber eyes. A single perfect tear escapes and traces a path down his rugged cheek. Alara, he whispers, his voice breaking on her name. Lily chooses that moment to stir. A small, sleepy sound from the bedroom. Mommy? They both turn toward the sound. Lily appears in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, her hair a wild tangle. She is no longer pale and frail, but flushed with healthy sleep. She looks at her mother. Then her eyes fall on the huge, strange man standing by the fire. Alara tenses, expecting fear, but Lily just blinks. She looks at Kael, her head tilted. Then she looks down at the sleeping pup at his feet. A slow smile spreads across her face. She walks right up to Kael. She doesn't reach for her mother. She reaches out a small hand and pats his leg, right next to where Kaylin is sleeping. Big doggy, she says, her voice full of sleepy affection. Then she yawns, leans her head against his leg, and closes her eyes. The sight breaks him. A choked sob escapes Kael's throat. He sinks to his knees, his movements careful so as not to disturb the small girl leaning against him. He looks at Alara, his face a ruin of anguish and awe, and a love so profound it radiates from him like heat. I don't deserve this, he whispers. I don't deserve either of you. Maybe you don't, Alara says softly, kneeling in front of him, so their faces are level. And maybe I don't deserve a man who can turn into a wolf and find magic flowers in the dead of winter. She reaches out, her hand trembling, and gently wipes the tear from his cheek with her thumb. His skin is warm, rough, real. Maybe we don't get what we deserve. Maybe, if we're lucky, we just get what we need. He searches her eyes, looking for any hint of doubt, of fear. He finds none. Only a reflection of his own impossible hope. I have wanted, he starts, his voice thick, from the first moment, to touch you, to hold you. What's stopping you? She whispers. His gaze drops to her lips. Slowly, hesitantly, as if he expects her to bolt, he leans in. His hand comes up to cup her face, his thumb stroking her jawline. His touch is reverent, tentative. He is giving her every chance to pull away. She doesn't. She leans into his touch, closing the last inch between them. His lips meet hers. It is not a kiss of gentle exploration. It is a kiss of homecoming. It is the silent confession of 1,000 lonely nights, the desperate cry of a soul that has found its counterpart. It is fierce and soft, demanding and giving, a sealing of the impossible bond that has drawn them together. It tastes of wood smoke and winter and a wild, unshakable love. When they finally break apart, they are both breathless. He rests his forehead against hers, their shared breath mingling in the quiet air. Lily is sleeping soundly against his side. Kalen is a warm lump at his feet. The world outside, with its cruelty and its indifference, feels 1,000,000 miles away. Here, in this small cabin, surrounded by her impossible, mythical family, Alara is finally home. The cold in her bones has finally begun to thaw. 6 months later. The cabin is different. A new room has been added, built with strong, skilled hands and timber from the forest. The air smells of fresh-cut wood, baking bread, and happiness. Sunlight streams through larger, cleaner windows. Lily is chasing Kalen in the yard, her laughter echoing through the trees. She is strong, vibrant, her legs sturdy as she runs. The pup, no longer tiny, is now a lanky adolescent wolf, clumsy and full of joy, nipping playfully at her heels. Alara watches them from the porch, a soft smile on her face. She is different too. The haunted, fearful look is gone from her eyes. Her face has filled out. Her skin glows with health and contentment. She wears her hair loose, and it catches the light as she moves. Hale comes up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, pulling her back against his solid chest. He rests his chin on her shoulder, his own eyes on their children. He is dressed in simple jeans and a t-shirt, but he moves with the same regal grace, the same quiet power. He is the alpha, the leader of the pack that lives in the deep woods, but here he is just her mate, her husband, in all but name. She is getting faster, he rumbles, his voice full of pride. She will outrun him soon. She gets it from her mother, Alara teases, leaning back into his embrace. She feels his laughter, a low vibration against her back. His pack had been a shock at first. They had emerged from the forest one day, hesitant and wary, led by a stern-looking older wolf who was Kale's second in command. They had looked at her, this fragile human, with suspicion, but they saw the bond between her and their alpha. They saw the way he looked at her. They saw his healthy, happy son. And they saw Lily, the human child he had saved, who played with their alpha's air without an ounce of fear. They had accepted her. They called her their Luna. It was a title that still felt strange on her tongue. But the feeling behind Edolf belonging, a family, was the most natural thing in the world. A car pulls into the long drive, and Alara feels Kyle tense behind her. It's a rare occurrence, a visitor from the world beyond their woods. It's the old mailman, dropping off a package. He gives a friendly wave, his eyes widening for just a second as he takes in the sight of KL standing so close to her, so possessively. He doesn't see the pack that is watching, unseen, from the tree line. As the mail truck rattles away, another car appears at the far end of the road, a sleek, expensive car she recognizes with a jolt. Jason. Hale's arms tighten around her, a low growl starting in his chest. "It's all right," she says, placing her hand over his. "Let him look." Jason doesn't get out of the car. He just stops 100 yards away and stares. He sees the improved cabin. He sees Lily, bright and healthy, laughing as she plays with a young wolf. He sees her, Alara, standing not in fear, but wrapped in the arms of a powerful, confident man who looks at her like she is the center of his universe. He sees everything he threw away, everything he belittled and abandoned. He sees her happiness, a fortress he can never breach. For a long moment, he just sits there, a ghost from a past life. Then, with a squeal of tires on the dirt road, he reverses and speeds away, disappearing in a cloud of dust. He doesn't look back. Alara lets out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. It's not a breath of fear, but of finality. That chapter is closed forever. Kale turns her in his arms, his amber eyes searching hers. Are you all right? I'm perfect, she says, and she means it. She reaches up and traces the silver scar that runs along his jaw, a remnant of a life before her. I was so scared for so long. I thought being soft, being compassionate, I thought it was a flaw, a weakness that let people like him hurt me. She looks past him, to the deep, ancient forest that is her home, to the daughter who is her heart, to the man who is her soul. I was wrong, she whispers, a look of profound wonder on her face. It wasn't a weakness. It was a homing beacon.